Hello, how are you? Thank you. So, first of all, World Vision is a Christian organization. I always want to thank God for allowing me to get to where I need to be safely and to deliver this message to you. So, I always do that, and now that I've done it, I'll keep moving on. Second of all, I'd like to thank Amazon for inviting me as well and for an opportunity to tell this story. And it's a story that it's going to touch, it's going to hit a little bit close to home. So if you hear me pause or stop at some particular place, it's not because I've lost my place. It's because it's touched a bit of my family history. So before I get into that, well, let's talk about who World Vision is. World Vision, we do basically four things. We do community development, we do relief, we do microfinance, and we do advocacy. And the idea is to give children, the most vulnerable children in the world, an opportunity for a full life. And we use those four different attributes or four different activities to help the communities, develop the communities, preserve the communities, provide protection and safety to the communities so that they can have a full life. World Vision International is made up of 44,000 employees around the world, another 200,000 volunteers operating in a little over 100 countries. So that's a little bit about World Vision, but let me tell you a little bit about the project. And as I said, it's a project that kind of hits close to home. When most of us think of farms, we think of tractors and combines and irrigation systems and all the other things that either a large farm in the United States has or a corporate farm in the United States has. Very large acreage, very few people, state-of-the-art technology, state-of-the-art chemicals. But that's not what most farms in the world are like. Most farms are very small, most farms are very manual, and those farmers don't have access to a lot of information. Which brings me to the point of the story that I was sharing with you earlier, or my story. My grandfather was a sharecropper. Born in Arkansas, I grew up in northeastern Arkansas, so I knew the plight, and still know the plight, of small-hold farmers. My grandfather, as I said, worked very hard his entire life, and no matter what the crop was or how much came in, it was never enough to get us out of poverty. It was always the wrong crop, it was always the wrong time, it was always too little, it was always too much. And for that reason, my family was kept in poverty for a number of generations, until my father and until myself. So my point is, this project does hit home in a very unique way. Most people's refrigerators in the United States look like this, right? Looks like my refrigerator, unfortunately. I have 3 daughters, and for some reason they always have to keep looking in it to see what's in it. What's in the fridge, Dad? What's in the fridge? And every 5 minutes they tend to look at it. But most of the world doesn't have refrigerators. So what if you didn't have a refrigerator? What if you had to shop every day for the foods that you consumed and your family consumed? And what if every day when you looked in went to shop for food, the price of the food fluctuated greatly? So for example, you went and bought corn one day and it was 5 cents an ear, but the next day it was 25 cents an ear, and the next day it was 10 cents an ear, and the following day it was 30 cents an ear. How would you plan and manage your family being in a place where, as I said, poverty is rampant? There's really not a lot of technology, there's not a lot of innovation, and there's no refrigeration for you to share your crops. Both the farmer and the consumer deal with this inconsistency on a daily basis. So let's talk about the project specifically. Let's talk about Mali. In Mali, as I said, just like in rural Arkansas, there's no mechanism or no mechanics. There's no combines. There's no tractors. There's no irrigation systems. There's no technology. There's no complicated chemicals to keep pests away or plants green. And so the farmers, and these are actually pictures of farms in Mali, they are living hand to hand, day to day, isolated, separated, and without much information about what they're doing. They are literally surviving on a day-to-day basis. And then when they take the crops that do survive to the marketplace, often they're told, oh, if you only raised this other crop, we could have given you more money. Or, you know what, there's a long line of people who have the same crop that you have coming in today, so your crops are worth half of what they were yesterday. Or, oh, you know, if you just come back tomorrow, I can give you more for your crops because today is just not a good day for me. After the farmer has marched and transported their crops for kilometer after kilometer only to be told, you know, I'm really sorry, today's not the right day for you. So it's a marketplace that's created that's at a severe disadvantage to the farmer. So let's talk a little bit about the project that we have. Let's talk about the program. This is a project that was developed with World Vision, Amazon, and Cognizant in partnership. And the idea was, you know, how do we begin to make a change in the plight of these farmers? You know, how do we begin to collect, analyze, and get information to the farmers so that they can make good decisions through the entire agriculture cycle about what to grow, how to grow it, how to avoid famine, how to avoid pests, understanding how the weather is going to work, and then when to bring it to market in order to level the playing field for the farmers and to provide them with a more predictable marketplace for them to deliver their crops in. So that was the objective of what this project was all about. So as I said before, most smallholder farmers in Africa, and specifically in Mali, are impoverished, meaning they're very poor. They're isolated, which means there's no co-ops, there's no associations, there's nothing that helps them to have a fair market opportunity. And they're also struggling with the weather conditions and the pests and the other diseases that plague their particular crops. You know, seasonal weather patterns, although we have ways of predicting them and understanding when rain's coming and when drought's coming, most smallholder farmers do not. It is purely chance. And then children are impacted adversely as well. Hungry children and sick children tend not to go to school, tend not to be productive, and tend not to have a long lifespan. So there's a cycle of food, education, well-being, and protection that all of these children are impacted by. And by protection, what I mean is what happens when a family becomes so in debt that they can no longer pay their bills or feed each other. As most of you probably know, slavery is alive and well today. And one of the alternatives that families have when they get into this situation is to begin to barter and to sell their children to help offset their debts in food. So as you see, when food becomes an issue, when food security becomes an issue, the impact to a community, and specifically the children, can be catastrophic. What's the benefits of the system? Well, if we can have farmers understand what the weather's going to be like, potential pest infestations, and also market information, they can have a much better opportunity in the whole agriculture cycle, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to develop, grow, and provide the right crops at the right time to maximize their return. Also, farmers can then make livelihood decisions, make better understanding of the marketplace decisions, and can have a better outcome in their communities and in their neighborhoods. The other thing is we needed to provide this solution to the farmers in a way in which they could consume the information. So one of the things we did was using SMS or text messaging. The other is using radio broadcasting. Ways in which a simple farmer in Mali can consume this information, make decisions, and react to it in a positive way. So the concept, as I said, is very simple. The idea is to provide farmers with information that impacts them through the entire agricultural cycle so they can understand what it is that they should be planting. If every farmer in the community is planting maize or corn, maybe you should plant soybeans or beets or something else so that the market isn't flooded at a specific time. The other thing is to understand when to harvest. Because if everyone's harvesting at the same time, then you're flooding the market, and the buyer of those crops can pick and choose the price that they'd like because they know you don't have an alternative, and they know all the farmers are coming in at the same time. It creates an incredible disadvantage to the farmer. And then commercialization, the ability for farmers to begin to talk to each other, have information, and create co-ops and other ways for them to work together to have some competitive advantage or some leveling so that when they bring their crops to the market, they understand what the market was bearing historically, and they can understand what's acceptable to them and what's not acceptable to them. So it's all about information to the farmer through the entire agriculture cycle so that they can make good and productive decisions. Now, what the system looks like in its simplest form is the ability to collect data from various sources, and that's everything from various governments, from various commodity markets, from all types of different and disparate information, to pull that information into a singular system, analyze that information, and then send the information to a farmer, as I mentioned, in a way that the farmer can consume it, either through SMS or text, or through a radio broadcast about weather conditions, upcoming pest and insect problems, whatever the case may be, other farmers who are going to market. So providing this information in a very simple way, and that information being reliable, accurate, and locally focused so that that farmer can make an appropriate decision with the appropriate information. So let me tell you where we are with the project. So right now the project has gone live in Mali, and so we have the capability to aggregate a bunch of information, to provide that information to the farmers by way of SMS and radio broadcast. The farmers can also provide feedback on the system through text so that we can make modifications and changes to the system in this constant feedback loop. So they get the information, they utilize the information, they say, I'd like to see this, or I'd like to see a format differently, or I'd like to see timing. We can then make a transition in the system or changes, and then send them more information. So it's this constant feedback cycle that we have in relationship that we have with the farmers. The system also has the ability to capture local market prices, such as maize or corn, in a way that provides the farmer, once again, information so that when a farmer comes to the market and is told they're only going to get pennies for their maize, they understand that the previous farmers in previous days in that same time frame have gotten more. They can negotiate. And they can negotiate before they've taken all their crops to market, and they're stuck there with no options or no opportunities to negotiate or to change. The next piece that we're working on with the system is actually to take all this data, and right now we're taking the data, we're formulating it into information and providing it to the farmers, but we're not aggregating it, we're not mashing it up so that trends and a lot of other information that can be pulled together from various sources isn't being forecast. So in other words, we need to make the next step from just providing them good information to providing them much more intelligence about that information. So that step is coming. Let me show you a simple slide of what the system looks like. So first of all, it's not a simple system, right? When you're operating in Malawi with very little infrastructure, with your primary means of reaching your audience or radio broadcast, and that's the old-fashioned radio broadcast, and SMS texting, the system has to do a lot of different things. It has to take a lot of information, aggregate it, and be able to share it in the most simplest form that it can. Very short bursts, very meaningful, very accurate, and not very verbose, because the farmers' systems and the way that they're accepting the information can't consume a lot of information, nor can we broadcast a lot of it. So the idea is taking a lot of information, simplest form, getting out to the farmers in a very, very simplistic way in which they can consume. So that's the idea. So what are the possibilities? As we think about doing this system, and we did it just in Mali, which is a small country in Central Africa, as most of you probably know. What if we took this through all of Africa, or if we even took it around the world? Would we be able to improve the way that farmers around the world are productive efficient, and can grow the right crop at the right time to take to the right market, creating a different opportunity economically and health-wise for them and their communities. Can we change the way the costing is done in the market so it's more favorable to the farmer and we don't have these swings of prices and the disadvantage that the traditional smallholder farmers are put into or are subjected to? And then can we enable children in the developing world to have a better opportunity at life, a better opportunity within their communities to contribute, and a better opportunity to have the fullness of life, which is truly the objective of World Vision. So can we enable this globally, and can we scale this technology to do this not only in Africa, but through the whole world? And that's what we're beginning to look at and to try to understand. And then last of all, what would those benefits be? And we've talked about it before, empowering the small farmers to be more productive, more efficient, and to have a better opportunity at controlling their lives and the outcomes of their communities and their families. The benefits to children, as I said, healthy children tend to do better in their communities and in their schools. And then World Vision, as a first responder, as I said in the opening slide, one of the things we do is relief. What if we could predict the slow onset disasters? And slow onsets tend to be drought and famine and other things that are not sudden impacts like tornadoes or hurricanes, but things that happen over a long period of time and then stay for a long period of time. What if we can begin to predict those and then go into the communities and say, you're going to have a drought, or you're going to have some other issue. You're going to have a locust problem. Let's begin to store your grain instead of selling it all at the market. Let's begin to move mobile hospitals into your community. Let's begin to move water into your community so that what's coming can be mitigated, the loss of life can be minimized, and the recovery can be well managed. What if we could use this type of technology and this type of system all over the world? So that's all I wanted to share with you. As I said before, when we began this project in Mali and I was talking to our national director and some of the people who were working on it, they began to describe my childhood. They began to describe the days when my grandfather was taking our corn or soybean to market, and he would come back only to find out that the person who was buying his products was only going to give him half of what he expected, or a third of what he expected. Or he would go to the market and find that all the other farmers in the community were also at the market at the same time. And he knew the cost of going back and dragging all of his crops back to the farm outweighed the pennies he was going to get for his crops. And so he was caught in a very, very poor situation. And it tended to happen time after time after time after time. And so with this system and with this technology and with this program, we have an opportunity to change the lives of the farmers in Mali and hopefully in all of Africa and potentially the world, to not suffer the same plight that my family did for the generations that my family were literally sharecroppers, and to get them out of poverty at a much faster rate than they have. So that's why I said at the beginning, there are certain projects that tend to hit home, and for me, this is the project that hit home. So that's all I had for you. I'd like to take some questions if you've got them, and thank you for listening. Any questions? I believe there's a mic over there and one in the middle if you have any questions.
Yeah, we've got one over here for you, Ed.
So you were discussing, I don't think you've implemented yet, but informing farmers about what other farmers are planting so that you don't have an excess of one type of crop within a year. Now, if this becomes successful, how do you inform them to all plant different crops? Because surely if over the radio you say there's too much maize, plant soy this year, then you swing it to the other side.
Yes. No, that's a great question. So there's a couple of things. One is most smallholder farmers, just like my grandfather's farm, don't understand the science of farming. They're surviving. So they're planting the crops that either they have historically planted or that they find that are easy to plant or the lowest cost seed that's available. In each of those scenarios, if you live in a geography where traditionally maize is what you grow, then every farmer in your area has the same history, has the same access to low-cost grain, and has the same family heritage. So what we begin to do is talk to them about crop rotation. We talk to them about using natural means and methods of doing pesticide control, natural means and methods of fertilizer. So if there's 6 or 7, let's say 7 for simple numbers, farmers in a particular area, we'll say to farmer A, in the 7th year, you're going to rotate in your crop and grow soybeans and not maize. Farmer B, in the 2nd year, you're going to do the same thing. Farmer C, on the 3rd year. So you begin to get this natural crop rotation, which at least gives some insulation, right, to the process. And then as we learn through this process, what we can begin to do is look at the world maize market and look at the maize market in their area before they begin to buy seeds. And remember I talked about impacting the agricultural cycle and saying to them, we're expecting a bumper crop of maize next year. It would be best for you to plant soybeans, otherwise you're going to be in a scenario where you're going to be just another person who's grown a commodity crop. So trying to give them the intelligence to understand where the market's going, trying to give them good farming principles like rotations, and trying to get them to collaborate, to buy things together so that they lower their prices are kind of the 3 basic methods that we're trying to get them to create crop diversity. So does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, once again, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.